Okay, so in this video, I'm going to do a pretty general walkthrough of Midibahx on how to get it set up and how to get it started. There's more detail in another video I have on my channel. I'll leave a link for that in the description. But basically, I'll be doing a walkthrough of the different elements that are part of the software and how you can use them and adjust them so that it can be a more user-friendly experience. So let's go ahead and get started. The first element you can see, go ahead and just reset these, is going to be our where we generate our audio from FPC. I'll be using a MIDI controller today to demonstrate the beat, how to get the beat into the playlist. I'm using FL Studio, but you can use any DAW that can export MIDI and OGG files, which pretty much all of them can do. So I'm going to, here in the playlist, just record a quick beat. But I'm also going to go into the mixer and record using Edison. So this is where we'll be recording the audio. I set it to automatically record on input. Just make sure everything here is okay, good. So this will record both the MIDI file and the audio that we're going to be using in Edison. In future videos, I'll probably do a walkthrough on how to set up your MIDI controller, as well as how to set up the MIDI out and other features to get you more easily acclimated, but that's pretty in-depth. So I'll get into that in another video. So I'm just going to go and hit record. Oops. Before I do that, I will make sure that I set it to record on play. So I'll hit record and do a simple beat. And again, we're just doing this so that we have an example. Okay. And Edison usually puts a little silence at the beginning. I'm not sure why, but go ahead and delete that off. And then drag that into our playlist. And now you can see we have a recording. It records both on the sampler, the drum pad software, and in MIDI out, which we use to collect the MIDI data, and which allows us to export. So I'll just take this, and we actually should be in pattern 1. And if we play that back, you can hear. So first, to show you, we also have I just put 2 files here on the desktop. One of them is a folder. You can name it whatever you want. This is where I want to keep my records of all my MIDI files. But I also have a folder here where when you get the download and you export it from the website alexleeartwork.com, you'll get a file that looks like this. It'll say Midibahx pads. This is version 1.1. So yeah, you'll get that folder, and when you get it, you want to go to, and also again, I have another video that goes into more detail on the startup and setup for Midibahx, but this is just a general walkthrough. Go to Midibahx data, resources, and this is where you're going to keep your MIDI files. This is the folder we just created. This is where we're going to keep our temporary exports, and also for future records if you ever want to have anything backed up. This is where we would put it. You can also export directly to the resources, but I don't recommend it in case you already have something there. You don't want to overwrite anything, and also it's good to just have a backup in case you need it for later. So I'm going to go back into FL, and first I'm going to export just the audio. Now, to be just so that we're not exporting the audio twice, because if I left it like this with both of them in here, even if this is off, and even if this is the volume is down, sometimes you might get residual. It's better just to you might get some residual audio, but I found that it's better just to delete this off the playlist so that when you export, you're not getting double audio. Because as it was, when you play, it'll play both of them. It'll play both of them back. So get rid of that, and then first we're going to export the audio, and again that's going to be an OGG file, and we're going to navigate to our desktop and to our folder that I named MIDI stuff. This is Alex and Chi, that's my wife and I. But we're going to just name this test audio. And save it. Should only take a second. I'm actually going to cut this from here and go into our pattern, paste that, and export our MIDI file. Again, back to the desktop, back to MIDI, and we're going to name this one test MIDI. Actually, let me. Okay. And here for the MIDI files, you want to make sure that you rename this at the end of it .bytes. That allows, and just hit enter again. That allows Midibahx to actually be able to register it in the software, as opposed to it just trying to read it as a MIDI file. So we have those now. We're going to just select them both, and I like to right-click and drag into the resources file and copy it. Okay. Now that we have these here, go back into FL one more time, and you can, if you have a program like I have here, I use software software program called Loop B1 or Loop B to send MIDI information outside of FL Studio. So if you wanted to, you could play along with Midibahx and use live audio and just have whatever samples or synths or basses that you want to use while you play along. But in this example, since we recorded the audio for the percussion and the samples, we're going to just disable this now. I'll just do that by turning it down. And that way we'll only be hearing the audio from Midibahx. So once we have that all set up, we go into the Midibahx software. And again, we're going to be naming these test audio and test MIDI respectively. We don't need to add the .mid or the .bytes once we get inside the software. And I may change this in future updates, but for now, the Midibahx configuration window is going to come up. This is where you just set your preferences. I recommend setting it to low and to whatever display you have and whatever dimensions. Most people have a 1920 by 1080p. I have a Surface Book as my laptop that's also plugged through HDMI, and that's 3000 by 2000, but I usually just use my display. So that's the configuration that I have it set up. You can do it windowed, but I tend to let it just use up the real estate on the screen, but it's up to you. So I'm going to hit play. And play. Now, when you get Midibahx, these will all be, I have some values in here, but it'll look like this. There won't be any information, but you can have up to 3 tracks and the MIDI file and the BPM, or beats per minute. One of each of these, so you would need at least 1 track, 1 MIDI file. Well, you technically don't need an audio track, but you need at least a MIDI file and the BPM to be set. So on this track, just go back into it. In this track, you can see that the BPM is set to 130. So that's the BPM we're going to use. I didn't really pay attention to the beats per minute because nothing was being quantized, or I wasn't playing along to something that had a particular BPM, so it doesn't necessarily matter. But to get the speed of the MIDI beams to be consistent, I recommend setting using the BPM that your track was, because you will probably have that set up. So on track 1, remember our audio track was, just pull it up so you can see again. Our audio track was test audio, test_audio. You can rename it whatever you'd like, but I just chose to use this because it's a good reference. And that's what we're going to put in the track 1 section here. And also for our MIDI file, I'm going to put test_mid. Again, you don't need to add the .ogg or the .mid.bytes, just the name of the file. So in here, let's do test_audio. Don't need to worry about caps, and hit set. And that'll set so that you'll be able to read the audio file in the game. And here we have the MIDI file, and we're going to use test_MIDI. And we're going to hit set. And lastly, here under BPM, we're going to do 130 and set that as well. Okay, once all of those are set up, you should just be able to hit play and it'll work. And as you can see there, go ahead and restart it. As soon as the first note in your track reaches the virtual MIDI device, the audio will automatically start to play. Now, depending on your system and the latency of your devices, with Midibahx, you can change the start position of the audio files, or if you have a song that you want to have start a little bit later, for whatever gameplay reasons, you can set that. And also, there's the latency key, which basically shows when you're hitting the buttons, how far away from the device you'll be triggering the notes to be registered during gameplay. In another video, I'll go into more detail about that and try to show a better example. But once again, there's another video I have that goes into this stuff in great detail. I just wanted to show you all a real-time reference for it. Now, the score here was because I had recently played the game before, but you can always reset it back to 0. So, again, you just hit the spacebar. Now, I was missing the buttons because I didn't get a good chance to practice it, but you can see here that the score goes down much faster. It tries to, I guess, add to the gameplay, to make things a little bit more difficult, and to also show a better registry of the notes that you're hitting versus the notes that you're missing. For each of the for each of the tracks, there's a corresponding audio slider, which you can modulate how loud or how soft you want the audio to be. And also, when if you hit the space bar after the game is ended, it'll just play the audio back so you can get a reference. Okay, and just another, just to show you again, there. If I were to turn the audio here all the way down and play, wouldn't hear anything. Okay, so just gonna exit here, and the reason why this is version 1.1, the reason why this is version 1.1 as opposed to 1.0, I guess, with the first version, is because I did add in the most recent update multiplayer compatibility. So here you can play on both screens. And also, if you hit 1 on your keyboard, you can change the position and use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out if you want a different angle for your gameplay. And hitting 1 again will bring it right back. And you can reset the scores for both of these. Some of the things I want to add in the update for the next version are, one, I plan on adding functionality so that you can have individual MIDI files per pad. I also wanted to add perhaps a percentage tracker for the game as opposed to just the high score, so you can see how many of the correct notes you hit versus your misses. There'll also be updates for having the quality be a little bit better, adding different effects like lighting effects and color change for the notes and for the device. I do want to do something like that and maybe have a way to register different colors for each of the hits. And a few other things like that, but I'll make a dedicated video for those different items. Right here you can see I have the channel set to the last set of notes on here. Okay, and I think that is just about it. I will keep all of the updates on the blog, on my website, on my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So if you're interested, you can still follow there, and I'll be sure to add all of the updates as they come along for the software. And you can ask me any questions you like there. Thanks for watching.